What's going on, everyone? This is Enzo of Team Bandit Gang, and as you can see, I have taken residence in the Team Bandit Gang YouTube channel, which means all, if not almost all, of the videos you see on this channel have been edited by me with some help of members of the team, and sometimes members of the community. For those of you who know me, you'll know that I have wanted to find ways to present card game videos in an entertaining way, while at the same time being somewhat educational. If you want to see more of our creations, be sure to subscribe to the channel to get caught up with anything and everything Gwent and Witcher related. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you the Team Bandit Gang Gwent Decklist Showcase. This deck was also created and introduced to me by Decode789, who explained to me the backbone of this deck, and I must say, I thoroughly enjoyed playing with this deck. So let's begin. So I'll be sure to have a link to the deck in the description below if you want to give it a shot. While the deck can be seen as a traditional Arachas Swarm deck, the main difference with this deck is the mentality that is behind the use of this deck. Because of that, I will be emphasizing this deck guides on the card lists, as I feel that every card in this deck serves a purpose, and the times they are played can be a game changer on winning versus losing. Before I start to go through the list, I will cover something that is prevalent on Arachas Swarm decks. While I was playing this deck on my streams, I have been told that Yrden is a good addition because he nullifies a row that gets boosted by Yennefer. But this compensation can be nullified if Yennefer is played correctly based on the mentality of this deck. The only downside to not using Yrden is that it can cause a bigger problem in mirror matches, but as long as you get the idea of how this deck works, how you apply it and adjust is up to you. The main key of this deck is to apply pressure to your opponent as early as possible by swarming up quickly and using swarm support cards to boost your drones, while using tech and removal cards to take care of your opponent's strongest cards in their arsenal. The main key to remember in this deck is that the front row is meant for the swarms, while the back row is meant for all of your other units. Keep this in mind as I go through these cards and you will understand why that is the case. In the decklist guide, we will be going from bottom to top for showcasing the cards. With that being said, we will be starting with the Indrega Eggs. This card serves well as a good round 1 startup on blue coin. Since normally we would want to start with Predatory Dive, we won't be able to do that on blue, so we need a proactive play. The purpose of the eggs is to either be a fodder for Predatory Dive in turn 2 to create 4 spiders as a potential setup for the Indrega Warriors, or even the Chimera, though you would likely want them to serve either as one of the first 2 options. There are times where you find yourselves in situations where you will need to use the Chimera to eat them due to a lack of consume units, but the priority is to set up that swarm relatively quickly. Ideally, we want to see the eggs on the board within the first 3 turns due to their ability to spawn a number of drones once they've been destroyed. The next card on this list is the Indrega Warriors. They are useful because their consumption of insectoids can create more drones with their ability. But if the Indrega Eggs have already been used as Predatory Dive bait, then the Indrega Warrior in your hand can either stay there, or provide a 6-point play while serving as another insectoid for the Arachas Behemoth boost, as well as spawning those extra drones assuming you ate the insectoids with it. If there are any in the deck and no more eggs to eat, they can always serve as the option to put at the bottom of the deck by Maxi Van Dekar if you do not like your upcoming draws from her ability. When it comes to the Wild Hunt Riders, their main role is to serve as your scout cards. What I mean by this is that if you win round 1, then the Riders can be used in your first turn to check out how your opponent will play. Remember to place them in the back row in case you decide to make a push. Depending on the matchup, you can choose either to continue the push with the 2 extra bodies, potentially using all of your charges with the Riders for a very aggressive Yennefer drop to pressure your opponent in round 2 or round 3. As for the Chimeras, their ability to consume a drone on the board in order to boost all of the other drones in that row can make for some very strong firepower at 5 provisions. But it can also be used as a secondary consume unit for the Indrega Eggs if you don't have any Predatory Dives left, or if there are no warriors in your hand. It is also an option that can come from the location of Dol Dulak if you need that extra boost to your drones to prevent them from being completely annihilated by the crushing traps or the recently emerging Wild Boar of the Sea due to the amount of swarm you may start to see on the ladder. The next card on this list, and in my opinion, the second most fun 5 provision card in the deck, is Spontaneous Evolution, which serves as another strong support for the Insectoid Swarm, as boosting an Insectoid by 4 allows the card to spawn 3 drones on the same row as the Insectoid. This is great to keep the theme of swarming drones in the front row to set up your Chimera or the Arachas Behemoth, You can use this card to protect the drone by boosting them to 5, and you are almost guaranteed at least one drone for when the swarm boosts start coming in. And now we come to the most fun 5 provision card on the list, and that is Predatory Dive. As someone who is a huge fan of content, Predatory Dive fits the bill, as you will see shortly. When it comes to this card, you either play it first if you're on red coin, a lot of the players will slam big units in order to try and get tempo early, or an engine that is boosted by Tactical Advantage or Crystal Skull. On blue coin, you play it second after Indrega Eggs, hereby destroying it to have 4 drones on the board early in the game. If neither scenario is available, then you look for the first opportunity to use it that benefits you, or you try to save it for the next round, where you will look for these 2 conditions in round 2, whether you've won or lost. The last of the bronzes, and what I find can be a good finisher card once your swarm is all set up, is Bone Talisman. If you're able to swarm your board completely, then this card can grant you 18 points. If location's on the field, then it will yield 17 points, which is still pretty good. In fact, I would say if you have more than 10 units on the board, then you're getting a good payoff for Bone Talisman. And of course, if you win the game through this card is also a good thing as well. If your last 2 cards are Bone Talismans, whether that would be 2 base copies or 1 plus 1 from a Neuromancy, then that can lead to a twin set of very strong finishers. And that will do it for the bronzes, but before we get to the golds, allow me to showcase some of my best plays using the Predatory Dive that caught a lot of people off guard during games. The hell was that? You already know what's gonna happen! This is so delicious. Are you kidding me? Bye! Now we hit the golds. And the first gold card is a card that I initially didn't like, but now I really like it, and that is Maxi Van Deckar. The good thing about her is that she gives you the opportunity to look through your deck and get an insight as to what you will draw. If you don't like the next 5 cards, 3 draws plus your 2 mulligans, then I almost always put an Indrega Warrior on the bottom and the deck gets shuffled. This foresight can dictate how you will pilot the rest of the game and be crucial in winning against certain matchups. The next gold card we will cover is Deregere. The thing with Deregere is that since he is your only lock unit in the deck, use him wisely. I would say he would be useful for locking engines that can damage and remove drones from the board, while serving as a 6-point body for your back row, which is good for your swarm boosters, such as Yennefer or the Talismans. He's also good with locking strong gold engines, which can result in really good trade-offs with the 7 provision neutral gold card. When it comes to Parasite, the ability to damage 6 to a unit is often good for the same purposes as Deregere, which is to deny the engines from accumulating points over time, especially if they can deny our swarm in the process. So Parasite is good if we completely want to get rid of such engines in case they get purified, in which case they can cause chaos all over again. On the flip side, it can be used to boost our own units. We can protect our drones with this card to prevent them from being destroyed by 1 damage engines, but we do not want to use this card on a tall unit as we do not want to get impacted by Tall Punish card. Since we are a swarm deck that uses quite a number of strong organics, it's only natural that we add Wispus Tribute to this deck. Not only is she good for tutoring organic cards when we need them, she also serves as a body on the board, and opponents don't often think about removing her because they are too occupied by the drones, so she mostly sits in the back row waiting to be boosted by the influence of Yennefer and the Bone Talisman. The addition of Arachas Behemoth is also as natural as the Wispus since it supports both the Insectoid archetype and the Swarm playstyle, so it finds a spot in this deck. I always try to use this card as greedy as possible by making sure I have enough drones on the board so that when this card enters, the additional 2 drones it brings into the fray are enough to fill up the entire row, while boosting all the spiders on said row. The use of Dol Dulok here is for good convenience. We can spawn a Chimera if we need a consumer, or the secondary option could be the hybrid. And this is if you have consumers at hand, which can get some points whether your drones are consumed by our consumers on the deck, but the true value of the location comes from its order ability. And no, it's not placing the strongest unit on top of the deck, that means nothing to us. Unless it's a 4-power Triss, then maybe. But we care about the drones being spawned on each side, which gives us 2 bodies on the front row for the swarm support. I think we can see a theme here. If you don't, well, maybe rewatch the video. Now we come to a very interesting card in the deck, and that is Yennefer of Vengerberg. Most people would not have her on the deck unless Yrden accompanies her to compensate for some of the boosts she gives them and then some. But I think that comes down to how you play her. See, the way she's played in this deck is one of a very aggressive nature. She's really good for applying that very early round pressure if you plan to push round 2 or round 3. For example, the starter of the Wild Hunt Riders to Scout is already 2 bodies on the board. If you have the location without order used yet, that serves as another 2 bodies, which means you can get 4 bodies on turn 1. If your opponent starts slow, then you can commit to a hard push by playing almost all of your charges. Be sure to save 1 in case you need a drone for round 3 with a spontaneous evolution, before playing Yennefer, which is a whopping 16 point swing, assuming they played 1 unit in turn 1 and you have all 5 charges, in which case 4 charges would be used and saving 1 for round 3 just in case. This style of aggressive play from Yennefer can provide early pressure and can sometimes cause your opponent to worry because now you have control of the round in terms of points, and they will likely have to use strong gold cards in order to catch up on these points. Now this next card may seem like an odd addition to the deck, and that is Crimson Curse. But when I play it more, I think it's a good addition. Now hear me out. Since the buff to the Ekamaras, it is not as easy to remove them from the board anymore, and with Crimson Curse being able to spawn 2 of them instantly, playing the Crimson Curse on the back row to guarantee the bodies on the back row works. Now, you might think that people can play around this. Well, who's going to expect this card to be in a deck like this, apart from maybe those who have seen this deck guide? So maybe that can be a reason to expect it. But apart from that, you should always find value playing this on the back row, because your opponent would have no reason to avoid playing on the back row. In addition, the Blood Moon that gets spawned can inch away at your opponent's points, either through bleed or damage bleeding units. The next one's going to be short because it really needs no explanation. Let's face it, we know what Karathi Heatwave is here for. It's meant to remove the pesky artifacts or anything that gets super tall. It's a fun time seeing a 12 power unit get removed from the Heatwave and your opponent being down 12 points so that they have to keep up. Or their swarm is being slowed down because of the removal of Feign Death, as an example. Triss Telekinesis is also a fun card in this deck because I made a lot of funny calls involving her ability. All of our bronze special cards are super good in this playstyle, so having her on this deck is only natural. I would explain how it works, but just take a look at how I use her properly in this game. Should I risk the Pred Dive? I think I'm feeling frisky. I'm a frisk it. But yeah, Crimson Curse is... Screw it, we're gonna risk it. Pred Dive, half 50-50. 50-50.
I will not let this become a second Sodom.
Last but not least is Oneiromancy, the ultimate tutor card that can bring anything hidden from the depths of our deck into the battlefield twice. There are a lot of strong cards in the deck that work well together that I can use Oneiromancy to get out a bronze card such as the Spontaneous Evolution or Bone Talisman and still be able to rack up a lot of points. And this concludes the Decklist showcase. I'm not sure if this is a deck guide as much as it is a Decklist showcase since I'm not showing full-on gameplay. But I think I've been able to explain a rough idea on how the deck works, which cards work well with others, when to play certain cards, your openers, counters, etc. So I hope you got enough out of it. I've also showcased gameplay as I'm explaining the cards, so I hope that helps in addition. If you made it this far, thank you for watching the video and I hope you enjoyed. This is Enzo from Team Bandit Gang, and I will see you all in the next Team Bandit Gang upload.